everybody. Good to see you. This is Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap. I'm your host. I'm Move to Amend's National Director, and I'm coming to you live today from Los Gatos, California. It's not normally where I am, but I'm here today. As always, you can find us here on the last Wednesday of every month at 5 o'clock Pacific, right here on Facebook Live and on Twitter and on YouTube too now. Move to Amend is the campaign to pass the We the People Amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations don't have constitutional rights and to get big money out of politics. Today we have a bunch of news and updates, so stay put, don't go anywhere. But before we get started, make sure that you share or retweet this live stream using the hashtag #MoveToAmend and hashtag #LiveReport for a chance to win a free t-shirt at the end of the report. We always give out prizes, and this month we're doing our t-shirts. So at the end of the show, I'll announce two winners, one for Facebook and one for Twitter. And the way to win is to help spread the word by sharing this live feed with the hashtag #MoveToAmend on Facebook, and on Twitter, retweeting this live feed with the hashtag #MoveToAmend. And like I said, we'll pick a winner and I'll announce them at the end. Also, feel free to ask me your questions anytime. I'll answer them at the end. And if you're tuning in not live, you can also ask us your questions and somebody on our team will make sure to comment back to you. And we'll get back to you and answer your questions as best we can. So I just realized that I have this set up wrong in a way that makes it so I can't see both of the things I need to see. So you're going to have to wait for 1 second while I fix it. Okay. All right. So yeah, July. Doesn't every month seem like it's just like kind of an eternity, except for those weird months where they take forever? July feels like both. There's been so much nut stuff that has happened. Let's see. Kanye West announced that he was running for president, right? Early in the month, but now he's not anymore, maybe, or something like that. And then also, you know, Trump's going full fascist. We should probably call a spade and be explicit about it. Fascism is out in the open now, instead of the usual American fascism, which is only behind the scenes, because really we've been headed this way and acting this way for a really long time. Remember Standing Rock? Remember Occupy? There's a lot of news right now about how Trump has been using federal agents to snatch people up and illegally detain people and all kinds of icky stuff, and we're going to talk about it. But the reality is Trump is not the first president to be doing this, not even in our lifetimes, and we need to remember that. But with his poll numbers sagging, even the polls conducted by Fox News, Trump is in panic mode, and to prove to his remaining base that he's the law and order president, he's ordered federal stormtroopers to descend on Portland and other cities to wreak havoc and provoke protesters. Innocent people have been abducted, people who are not even part of the protest necessarily, but who are walking home, who haven't engaged in illegal activity at all, not to mention that it is against the Constitution to snatch people up regardless, even if they have committed crimes or are suspected of committing crimes. That's still not the way that things are supposed to be done. Stuffing people into unmarked vehicles, we've probably all seen the footage, not informed of their charges, being arrested by federal troops who refuse to identify themselves. And Trump is now threatening to keep the federal presence in Portland into October. And numerous other cities his private army is being dispatched to numerous other cities. These folks do not know what they're doing. They're not equipped for this kind of activity. These are soldiers. For example, let's see, in a counterterrorism mission center memo revealed that U.S. Marshal Services on Monday identified 100 officials that they had sent to Portland to relieve or back up marshals at the courthouse. The Department of Homeland Security also sent more than 36 Customs and Border Protection agents to the city to back up the tactical agents from ICE and BORTAC, the Border Patrol equivalent of a SWAT team, as well as the Federal Protective Service. But there's also the presence of another camouflaged, non-insignia-bearing, ununiformed group. Private contractors are also being used from the security group called Constellus, which I'd never heard of before, which has ties to Eric Prince, the younger brother of the U.S. Secretary of Education, back Betsy DeVos. The ties between Prince and the White House don't end there. Prince acted as an informal advisor to the Trump administration at one point as well. No mainstream media outlets seem to be covering all of these corporate connections, but these agents are terrorizing the people of Portland. They're not even cops, and they aren't playing by the rules. And we all know that and have seen over the last many months on full display how police don't either. If you look up Constellus on Glassdoor or LinkedIn, Indeed, or the other job search engines, you can find their job openings in Portland right now and many other cities where the civil unrest is going on. According to the listings, the jobs typically pay $70,000 a year. Not bad for a company that back in February was on the edge of bankruptcy. Constellus Holdings piled on debt over the past decade and liabilities of more than $1 billion, missed a debt payment on December 31st, putting it in default, but now miraculously business is booming and they're hiring new folks. So that's that situation. And while those jobs are better suited for sociopaths on demand, almost half of the US population does not have a regular job. So we're still in economic meltdown as a result of the global pandemic. The percentage of Americans who are employed sits just over 50%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics employment population ratio. And as the COVID-19 pandemic overtook the United States and is not under control by any stretch of the imagination, it brought with it an unprecedented financial crisis and unemployment rates at the highest level since the Great Depression, especially amongst Black, Hispanic, and Asian workers, 16.8%, 17.6%, and 15% respectively in May, compared to 12.4% for white folks. Data has shown that the virus has disproportionately affected Black people and Latinos, who each have hospitalization rates 4.5 times higher than non-Hispanic whites, according to the latest data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Communities of color are also overrepresented among essential workers, who are generally unable to work from home and more likely to come in contact with the virus and are at a greater risk. Even though most people would assert that a disease or other disaster is blind to differences of race, creed, or wealth, that is not the case, and the pandemic is really showing that. And the both racial disparities and class disparities that we already had in the United States are being exacerbated by this pandemic. And of course, that is not being taken into account in terms of the response from our government. And speaking of that, to make that, they're just making it worse / not doing anything meaningful at all. Instead of protecting workers, Mitch McConnell and other, Senate Republicans are scrambling to protect their corporate crony friends from liability if workers and consumers get sick with COVID as a result of business practices. So McConnell and others are teaming up with ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, to pass a model bill for state legislatures that gives corporations immunity from responsibility, even if their policies are clearly putting people in harm's way and acting in a way that is not necessary in the interest of their bottom lines. ALEC's policy proposal comes as a number of states have already passed some corporate liability protections in recent months. In May, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Utah, where state legislators have ties to ALEC, enacted legislation limiting corporate liability related to the coronavirus. Another 5 states have introduced similar legislation. Several state legislators who were also listed as ALEC members as recently as last year sponsored the corporate immunity bills that became law in Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Utah. And in North Carolina, where most state senators co-sponsored the new bill, a previous ALEC chair is the state house chair is the state house chair of the Appropriations Committee in that state. So as you can see, finding a way to protect corporations from lawsuits by employees who are required to work during the coronavirus pandemic and who are at the mercy of whatever policies and procedures their workplace puts into place or fails to put into place. And these things are happening at the state and federal level and has been a priority for ALEC. That's the way that they are responding to this pandemic. And the Republicans in the Senate are just eating it up and trying to make it easier on the federal level as well. And then, of course, we also have, owners of giant companies like Elon Musk openly on Twitter last week opposing more stimulus for unemployed people. He said that another government stimulus package is not in the best interest of people, in my opinion, even though he made $2 billion just last week and received a tremendous amount of stimulus money from the first round for his corporation. And then, of course, we also have Biden saying that anarchists should be prosecuted yesterday. So we've got like people on all fronts colluding, working together to protect their own interests, protect the interests of their friends, and leave all the rest of us out to dry. According to a recent study from the Ascent, which polled nearly 2,000 Americans who have experienced income loss since March, it showed that more than 30% of Americans couldn't last a month without these $600 unemployment checks. We also have, as we know, the limit on the ability to kick people out of their homes is coming up at the end of this month. And there's been it looks like there's nothing that Congress is going to do to protect folks. So there are a number of proposals that are in front of Congress, and almost all of them put corporate greed before human need. We've tracked down multiple bills and we'll share on our website what we have there. The Senate Republicans are proposing another stimulus check, one check, and unemployment benefits that will be reduced. The bill's stimulus checks are similar to the checks in the CARES Act with a few tweaks. Eligible adults making less than $75,000 a year would receive a $1,200 direct payment, and eligible couples filing jointly making less than $150,000 per year would receive a $2,400 direct payment. There would also be $500 payments for each dependent, regardless of age, meaning parents would get extra for college students that they support, which wasn't part of the CARES Act. The payments would phase out gradually as income goes up, disappearing completely at $99,000 and $198,000 for couples. And over the weekend, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said the record round of checks could go out as early as next month, although the timing is obviously dependent on when a bill finally passes, which is definitely up in the air. Yeah, right, though I don't think that it will come that fast. I still haven't even received mine, neither has my partner, and I have friends who haven't as well. So that's just my anecdotal personal experience. So the idea that these are going to get into people's hands before they're in a crisis is completely laughable. In terms of unemployment, Republicans don't want to extend the extra $600 a week federal unemployment supplement from the CARES Act, a benefit that expires this month. Instead, they're proposing cutting that payment to $200 per week until states are able to implement their new formula, which is kind of complicated, and we have the details on our website. But the reality is that people really desperately need those resources. The number of people who are without health care now as a result of the fact that they lost their unemployment. I mean, we've been told for years that the system is so great and people love their employment dependent health insurance. Okay, well, the pandemic showed us what the major flaw with that idea, because what happens when you lose your job? You're just out to dry. You can, of course, buy Cobra, but when you're unemployed and making pittance and there's no jobs on the horizon, then that's cost prohibitive for almost everyone. The Cobra costs so much money, and so what we have is just people without health care, no ability to pay for health insurance, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic and there's no end in sight. So the failed policy of the United States is crashing down all around us. And meanwhile, nobody in Congress is doing anything about it. Of course, Republicans and Democrats are fighting with each other about it. And, frankly, even the progressives in Congress are not really willing to fight, not really willing to band together, not willing to hold out for us and demand concessions on the part of the corporate beholden members. And so it's just a mess. Instead, we're left to fend for ourselves, and it's completely unclear what the plan is. I guess it's just that, you know, many people are going to be homeless, without health insurance, without jobs, and that's it. Whereas other countries have been able to provide assistance and support, and also have been able to handle the crisis better from a health perspective. Although the scary thing is that we're seeing that cases are on the rise, even in countries that thought that they had it under control, which definitely says that in a country like ours, where there's barely anything being done and people are debating whether or not they should even be wearing masks, we're nowhere near having this under control. And this idea that things can go back to normal and that people are going to be okay is pie in the sky. And it can't possibly be true that the people in charge actually believe that. So that is, I think, the main thing that we all need to pay attention to: calling your rep, calling your senators, and then we have to figure out how we're going to respond when what they pass is completely inadequate and not going to get the job done, and how we have to band together to fight for survival and to protect ourselves and each other and our communities. And it really is showing the flaws of corporate capitalism and the fact that our government is not there to protect us, to look after our needs. They're beholden to corporations, and many of them are part of corporations. They're not even beholden. They literally are part of the fabric of these companies, and they're the ones who bailed themselves out. So that's a reality. Remember that you can ask me questions anytime. You can make comments on all of this, and please help us spread the word by retweeting and sharing this feed on Facebook. Invite your friends to come and let's talk about it. And the good news is that it's not all bad news here. I do go through the corporate rule news, and that's what we're on right now. And I'm not done with that yet, but there will be some updates from Move to Amend. And as usual, that's good news and exciting and positive developments. But I do want to let you know about one more thing: the case of this case that was just heard this month, or was ruled on this month in federal court around Monsanto and Bayer. Monsanto owns Bayer, and Monsanto has been fighting for years a law in California that requires companies to disclose when their products are found to cause cancer. And Monsanto has argued that Roundup, which has been, which there are tens of thousands of cases of people suing Monsanto as a result of getting cancer from being exposed to their products, and yet they have maintained that Monsanto does not cause cancer. And in this month, a federal judge agreed and said that because of Monsanto's First Amendment right not to speak under the First Amendment, that California's law should not require them to disclose that Roundup causes cancer. So we just recently published an article about that in Common Dreams. Thanks to Common Dreams for helping us educate people about that reality. And you can check it out. It's called Corporate Constitutional Rights Are Cancerous to Democracy, and makes clear that the solution to this problem is the We the People Amendment, which says that only human beings have constitutional rights, not corporations, and that money is not speech. And also further just makes the point that we've been making for the last 10 years, that this is not just a money and politics issue. The solution cannot just be to overturn Citizens United and get money out of politics. The issue goes deeper than that. It's about corporations being able to claim constitutional rights to use the Constitution to defend themselves when, in those rare instances where we're able to convince our state or federal government to pass laws to protect the public, they're able to get those laws overturned in court under the idea that they violate their constitutional rights. Let's see. Oh, and speaking of Monsanto, there's another story related to them. The fossil fuel industries, or wait, maybe I'm reading this all wrong. I think I'm going to skip all that because I'm actually got myself all confused. I skipped it in the first place and I thought I could frequently go back, but now I'm confused. So forget it. But do check out the article in Common Dreams that kind of lays out all the details, and make sure you sign the motion to amend to support the We the People amendment, because that's the only solution to this problem of corporate rule. And anything else is going to be a Band-Aid, which will be vulnerable to further minimizing through court decisions that will overturn anything that we do that isn't a constitutional amendment. You're listening to Move to Amend's monthly live report. I'm Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap, Move to Amend's national director. Move to Amend, for those of you who don't know, is the campaign to pass the We the People amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations don't have constitutional rights and to get big money out of politics. You can ask your questions anytime. If you're listening to this feed not live, you can also ask your questions, and obviously I won't be able to answer them on the video, but we will answer them with our team in response, in comments. And make sure that you help us spread the word by sharing this feed on Facebook and retweeting it on Twitter using the hashtag #MoveToAmend. And we'll pick 2 folks who do that and give you a t-shirt. All right, next up is campaign updates from Move to Amend. The most exciting thing to share is that this week, the California Democratic Party endorsed us again, and this time determined through a resolution that House Joint Resolution 48, which is the We the People amendment in the House of Representatives, would be priority federal legislation for the party. That's big news because here in California, we passed a ballot initiative in 2016 with 55% of the vote calling for Congress to pass the amendment. And so far, we have numerous Congress members in California who have not signed on as co-sponsors. We've also been targeting both of the California senators, Feinstein and Harris, to help us introduce the amendment in the Senate, and so far have not received word from them that they are willing to go ahead and do that. And even though we passed the ballot initiative calling on that support, so we've got the support from the people of the state of California, and now we have reiterated, re-emphasized support from the party of the majority of lawmakers from California. So we hope we can use that to apply further pressure and bring those senators along, as well as representatives. And speaking of that, next month in August is Lobby Month. And we have done this every year for the last many years, oftentimes as part of our national conference, which obviously we're not holding in Washington, D.C. this year, but we are going to be doing virtual meetings with federal representatives and senators all through the month of August, and we need you to do that with us. Of course, you know, I've been meeting with them for years, and we'll continue to do that, but there's nothing more powerful than constituents holding these meetings with their reps. We'll give you all of the tools that you need for a successful meeting. We can even join you since we can do it virtually. We can have folks from our national team or volunteers from your state who have already done a lobby visit before join to help give you more confidence and make sure that it's successful. We can connect you with others in your community so that it's not just you on your own. So all of the details can be found at movetoamend.org/lobby. This is a really important campaign this year. We have slowed down a little bit in the spring and into the early summer as a result of the coronavirus, because it has been hard to get this in front of lawmakers when they have said that, you know, their first priority is the immediate crisis, except for that they're not doing anything about that, but they've used that as an excuse. And then, of course, the uprising, and supposedly we're going to address police brutality. Didn't do anything about that either. So now it's time to hold their feet to the fire. Election is coming up. Every single member of the House of Representatives is up for election. A bunch of senators are as well. This is the time to get in front of them and make demands. This is the time where they actually come through. And we have 74 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. Last month, Jerry McNerney came on to make our 74th co-sponsor. And that means we're just one away from our goal of 75 in 2020. However, we would love to surpass that goal every single year. Since we started setting goals in Congress, we've actually brought in a lot more co-sponsors than the goal that we set, and we don't want to come short of that again, or we don't want to come short of that for the first time this year. So help us get that at least one. Could be your rep, but I'd love to see us get 11 more, and at least. So again, movetoamend.org/lobby is where you can find all the details and get started with We the People Lobby Month. And we'd love to help you contact your representative and get started with the meeting. That will be a meeting that's set up virtually with either the staff or your representative themselves. And so no need to risk coronavirus exposure. It's something you can absolutely do from your home, from top to bottom. And as I mentioned, it is a big election year. So the Pledge to Amend campaign is going strong. We do Pledge to Amend every election year. So this year, obviously, we are targeting federal lawmakers who are running for re-election and running for office against them for the House and the Senate. But Pledge to Amend campaign is actually a campaign that targets state and local candidates as well, because this is an issue that actually affects all levels of government. It's not just a federal issue. Obviously, to pass a constitutional amendment, we need Congress to pass it and the states to ratify. So that's why they are targets. But local elected officials are certainly facing and making decisions on policy around corporate rule, oftentimes around corporate constitutional rights and money in politics. So there's a direct connection to the We the People Amendment. And strategically speaking, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You can't pass a constitutional amendment in one congressional cycle. And so we have to be prepared for multiple years of this effort. And we've already been at it for a number of years, and we will continue until it's done. And the people who are running for local office now are the people who will be elected to state office later and federal office. And so getting in early and helping them understand this issue, understand how corporate constitutional rights undermines, if not sabotages, democracy, and how it's their job, if they want to be leaders in a community, to take a position and to support the amendment with their office. And so Pledge to Amend is how all of that happens. I want to give a shout out to our folks in Minnesota who are kicking butt in getting so many people running for office in their state, and but numerous other states as well. So you can also see which candidates have already taken the pledge who are running, and vote accordingly, support them accordingly, but also letting people know who are not on the list, if there's not a race on the list, you can contact them as a voter and let them know that you want to see them take a position and tell you where they stand on the Pledge to Amend. Also want to invite you all to join on Friday and every single Friday through the summer. We're doing a new program called Making Sense with Move to Amend. And you get to hear from this broadcast is normally just me. Tonight we'll actually have our Grassroots director who's doing the Grassroots report, but Making Sense mixes it up, and there's members of our national team on the board level, other colleagues of mine on our staff team, and even some of our local volunteers and partners in other organizations who are teaming up 2 people per show and just going through the news of the week and making sense of it from our angle of corporate rule and building a democracy movement. So I hope you'll join Making Sense. I think this week it's Keon and Jason, our board member, one of our board members, and it gives you, a chance to get to know more of the folks on our team and kind of hear about the news and the goings on from their particular perspective. It's also a place where you can ask questions and join the conversation as well. And our webinar for August will be using social media to grow your Move to Amend group. That's on August 4th. It's always on the first Tuesday when we have them. And so if you're interested in that, Alfonso will share the link. And also, we're still available for virtual barnstorming tours. Move to Amend has always used the strategy of visiting local communities and doing public talks that are free. on the history of how we came to be in the situation of corporations having more rights than people and what we can do about it, and applying a local, angle and perspective as well. So those events are happening virtually this year because of the pandemic, and you can nominate your community to do one. We will help you put it on. You can invite Move to Amend supporters. You can, if you're a part of a local group that is working in your community, you can host us as well. We can partner with you to do it. But if you're just an individual, we can connect you as well. So barnstorming@movetoamend.org is the email address to write to if you'd like to organize a virtual barnstorming stop. And our movement education program, which is a program that we put together originally for our core volunteer leaders in each community, that gives a foundation of understanding of how past movements have been successful and also their shortcomings, especially as it relates to divide and conquer around racial justice or lack thereof, and privilege and oppression. So it's an incredibly timely program, and so we made an adjustment to it for the current times, making it available beyond just our Move to Amend core leaders, and something that you could utilize with your friends or your group. And it's multiple sessions. It's kind of a study group that you can do alone, or with a group is even better. And it goes through a basic understanding of privilege and oppression as it relates to race and gender and class, and then looks at the history of movements and how those dynamics have played out successfully and not as successfully, and how we guard against that as we're building our movements for social change right now. And then the last announcement I want to pass on is that we are always looking for examples of corporate rule stories, corporate rule affecting your community and what is happening on the ground. So if you have a story, we have a page on our site where you can submit it. If you want to write the kind of case study or example yourself, we'd love that. But if you just want to tell us about it so that we can explore helping people understand how corporate rule plays out in actual communities and what the impacts are, please let us know. And we are recording a series of short videos to help get all this across as well. So stay tuned for those. You're listening to Move to Amend's monthly live report. I'm Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap, Move to Amend's National Director. We're the campaign to pass the We the People Amendment to the Constitution to make clear that only human beings have constitutional rights, not corporations, and to get big money out of politics. You can ask your questions anytime. And next up is our dispatch from the Grassroots, and our Grassroots director, Keon Bliss, is going to be the one to give you that.
Hi there, folks. This is Keon Bliss, Grassroots Director for Move to Amend, and I'm here to give you the shout-outs of our grassroots leaders throughout the Move to Amend Coalition. So want to give a huge shout-out to our grassroots leaders in East Bay Move to Amend out in Oakland, California, where they have been hard at work securing a number of resolutions to be passed by local Democratic Party clubs and other organized labor groups as well to support the We the People Amendment, House Joint Resolution 48. And just this week, they've secured a huge win by getting the California Democratic Party's Central Committee to make HJR 48 a federal priority for the state party. This is the largest political party in the country, and we are super excited to see that the California Democrats taking this very seriously and really pushing all of California's congressional delegation, their House reps, and our senators to support the We the People Amendment and make clear corporations are not people and money is not speech. So great job, folks out in East Bay. Next up, we want to give a huge shout out to St. Paul, Minnesota, St. Paul Move to Amend and the Minnesota State Network. St. Paul alone has sent out more than 500 Pledge to Amend questionnaires with more than 500 with over 90 candidate responses so far in support of the We the People Amendment. Minnesota State Network has been hard at work building support in the state legislature as well for the We the People Act and made good progress in state senate and become a preferred and respected force for change. We wish them luck in getting the We the People Act introduced in the next session. Shout out as well to Central Ohio Move to Amend, who has recently launched a Talking About Democracy education series, a two-topic discussion that connects local groups such as Columbus Community Bill of Rights, as well as groups like the Jewish Voice for Peace, to discuss local issues and topics that matter most within their community in Columbus, Ohio, and beyond. They have also been hard at work producing a short film for their local ComFest that was held virtually this year. So keep an eye out for that once it is ready to share out. But great job, y'all, in Central Ohio. So keep up the great work. Shout out as well to our folks in the Grand Valley Move to Amend, who have been showing up in solidarity with the movement for Black Lives since the beginning of the George Floyd uprisings, based out in Grand Junction, Fruita, Colorado region. They continue to participate in local demonstrations out there in their community, as well as participating in local town halls with their Grand Junction City Council as well. So we want to give a big thanks to the folks in Grand Valley Move to Amend who continue to show what solidarity organizing is all about. Also want to give a shout out to We the People Miami County, one of our amendment working groups who are staying active despite the pandemic, who have been meeting regularly online and have published at least 2 letters to the editor, most recently in their local media outlets. So they are hard at work keeping the pressure on their House Rep, Warren Davidson of District 8 in Ohio, who, with support from fellow Move to Amend affiliate leaders in other conservative communities across the country as well. Great job, folks in Miami County. Keep up the great work, and please don't hesitate to let us know when you need help. And that's it for the shout out or the affiliate shout outs. I still want to give a huge shout out to all of our grassroots leaders across Move to Amend's coalition network. You all are doing fantastic work and are working hard, I know, on Pledge to Amend, which is going to be huge coming up into the August recess. So want to encourage you all to keep doing your best. Don't hesitate to be in touch, and please work together and collaborate with each other and folks in your community. Back to you, Kaitlin.
Thanks, Keon. Appreciate it. And all the really good work that you do every single day to support our affiliates. So that's our show in terms of presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So let me know. I do see one from Michael, so I'll stick it up here and see if I can get my head above it. It's a great question. Any record of a politician who started out with us at the local or state level and is now federal and continues to support us? I think the best answer I can give you is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who is the lead sponsor of the amendment in the House. She wasn't our original lead, but when our lead retired and we needed to find another one, Pramila stepped forward, and she originally started as a state lawmaker in the state of Washington, and she took our pledge to amend when she ran for office in Washington. We passed a ballot initiative in the state of Washington calling for the amendment. She obviously took note of that, and then when she went on to run for Congress, she took the pledge as a candidate running for Congress, and then once she got to Congress, became a co-sponsor. And then when it was time for us to need a new lead, she stepped up and said she would be happy to do it because she had been with us all the way. So that education that we did starting at the state level on her and her colleagues was key for securing her support and keeping it over the long term. So great question. And I'm really happy that I could give you such a good example that illustrates our strategy and why we start at the local and state level rather than just focusing on folks in Congress. Another question that I see here from Bruce, how do we find out whether a group previously met with your Congress member and what the result was? So the best thing to do would be to go to movetoamend.org/lobby, which is where we have our whole campaign for the We the People Lobby Month next month. And there's a form to sign up to say that you'd be interested in helping to set up a meeting with your representative or senators in this August. And in doing that, then we know that you're, taking this seriously and prioritizing it. And we will definitely give you all the background that we have on whether we have already met with your reps, what was said, who was part of that meeting, and where things stand. Because there are a number of offices where we already have conversations in progress, and we definitely want to make sure to bring you into the loop on all of that so that you can kind of pick up wherever things were left off. I will say, though, that there are also a number of offices where we have never had a chance to meet with them yet. Move to Amend is a grassroots group. We have a tiny staff, which is actually currently laid off and working as volunteers because of the coronavirus economic whole situation. We saw a dip in our fundraising that made us worried that we wouldn't be able to pay our staff for a time. So hopefully this will be a temporary layoff, a furlough. But we are, run by volunteers at this point, and even when we have had the resources to pay people, it has been mostly done at the local level by volunteers in these meetings. And so that means that if there isn't an active group in your community yet, there may not have been any outreach that has happened to your representative. So now is the time to do it when they're running for office or running for re-election. And we're in this situation that is completely exacerbated as a result of corporate power. And sorry about the children in the background. My neighbors are playing in their pool because it's really hot this afternoon. Thank you. Kids playing, that's okay. So anyways, we'll let you know what the backstory is, and if there is one, and if not, we'll obviously help you get started. And if there is, then we'll help you get, into the conversation that's already been underway, whether it's been with our national folks or somebody else on the ground who's also in your district or state, if we're talking about senators. Does anybody else have any questions for me before we close out for the night? I do want to, while we're waiting, make a pitch for everyone to become a Move to Amend supporter if you're not already one. The best way to do that is to make a monthly donation. The best way to do it is to make a monthly donation because of two things. One, that is the way that those of us who don't have a whole ton of money can contribute in a significant way. So even though I am currently on unemployment, I am still continuing my monthly donation of $28 a month to Move to Amend, $28 for the 28th Amendment. If you can't afford $28, 10 or 5 is wonderful as well. If you happen to be not doing so bad and able to give more, then that's amazing as well. We have folks who give, a couple $100s a month, some. But it's important for us because we can count on that money every single month to help us pay our basic costs and basic expenses. And I guarantee that there is no other national group out there, none that I know of, that stretch a dollar as well as Move to Amend. We are used to being grassroots, and we are used to getting the work done regardless of how much money is there, because that's why we're doing this. And to the extent that we are able to pay folks, it is so that we can continue and do more work. So there's no more important time than now to give to Move to Amend, so we can help make sure that we can continue come out of this economic crisis when the We the People Amendment is more important than ever, and continue to do the work. So please make a donation, and if you can, please make it monthly. Looks like there are at least one more question. What is a Move to Amend advocate? Well, that might be the very best role for you, whoever you may be. A Move to Amend advocate is kind of the easiest way to plug in and start volunteering with Move to Amend. So we call our chapters affiliates, and those are folks who have come together in a group of 6 or more to start a local group in their community. But if you don't have a local group of folks yet, or maybe you're involved with other organizations already, and you're not really in a position to run another local group or help run another local group, then being a Move to Amend advocate is a way that you can come in, help us do the work of furthering the We the People Amendment in your community, being most in the loop about the work we're doing and how you can help get it done where you live, and connect with the other work that you're doing. So if you're interested in all of that, movetoamend.org/volunteer is the way to plug in, and we'll have a conversation with you about what makes the most sense. You can also plug in with one of our national caucuses. If you're involved in a certain segment of organizing, whether it's labor or interfaith or with young people, or you could help start a local group in your community. So it really just depends on what will work best for you, and we're happy to work with you to connect with others in your community and or do the work in whatever domain fits your interests. Looks like we got another question from Kevin. Who are the Move to Amend contacts in Broward County, Florida? Well, Move to Amend is, run by volunteers. And so as a result of that, that means we have, kind of ebbs and flows of these local groups, people who are involved for oftentimes a number of years, but then maybe have to step back because of personal reasons or other interests or priorities. Sometimes an election is what will take a lot of people to do that instead of the longer term work, at least for a time. So we have had active chapters in Broward at different points. And Kevin, the best thing to do would be to go to movetoamend.org/volunteer, sign up, let us know that you're interested, and we can connect you with those folks, some of whom are still active and some of whom are not as much, but make sure that that's not anybody that you don't already know. And if you don't, introduce you to them and get you going. Aren't we getting huge contributions from Jeff Bezos's ex? No, and other super rich people, not to date. And I don't expect that that'll ever happen. We don't take money from corporations, obviously. We don't take money from the government. And to the extent that anybody with resources donates to us, it's actually in relatively small amounts. So that's why we need to get it done with all of us, giving what we can, chipping in what we can, $5 a month, $10 a month, $28 a month, $250 a quarter, whatever we can do to make sure that this movement continues to grow, because this amendment is so essential. It connects to almost every other issue, whether we're talking about climate change, now whether we're talking about the healthcare crisis, now that we have the pandemic, and the relief that has been given to corporations versus the people. All of this is symptoms of corporate rule. And it's high time that instead of just addressing the symptoms and only fighting against the symptoms, we get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is that our foundational law does not protect the people and the environment the way that it protects corporations. And that means that the wealthy who own corporations are able to use the law and the legal system against all of us when we try to assert our rights. And the only way to address that is through a constitutional amendment, and then constitutional reform beyond that. But it starts with the We the People Amendment. We see that as the most strategic first step for systemic, meaningful change in this country. And no matter what issue you care about, you need to help us pass the We the People Amendment, because otherwise we're not going to be able to get any of this done. So I think that's a good note to end on. It looks like the questions are all done. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Next month, we will be here on the last Wednesday of every month, which I'm looking for is August 26th. So tune in with me next time. Looks like the winners of our t-shirts are Twitter, Longing Logos, and on Facebook, it's Julie Kittiges. Sorry if I'm not saying your name right. So if you are Longing Logos or Julie Kittiges, then send us a direct message and let us know your address and your shirt size that you would like, and we will send that out to you. I want to thank Alfonso, as always, for doing the production and back end that makes this program possible. And the hell yeah moment for tonight is our own Pramila Jayapal taking it to the bad guys. Probably you may have seen this clip. We appreciate her for standing up, and we expect her and other members of Congress who are part of that team to step up and continue to support not just the We the People Amendment, but the people in this moment of crisis. So I'll leave you with Pramila Jayapal's biting and fighting words, and have a good night. Stay safe out there, and don't hesitate to be in touch with us if you want to plug in more. MoveToAmend.org/motion is where you sign the petition, and that's the very best way to get started and plugged in. If you aren't sure where to start, go there. Have a great night, everyone.
Protests against the murder of George Floyd and police brutality in Lafayette Park. Let us not be distracted by you or my GOP colleagues as to what these powerful and massive protests were actually about. They were about the persistent killing of Black bodies by law enforcement, and finally, an awakening in America of the conscience of our country. And yet, your response, Mr. Barr, was to direct federal officers to close in on the protesters and to use shields offensively as weapons, tear gas, pepper balls, irritants, explosive devices, batons, and horses to clear the area just so the president could get a photo op. So I do want to ask you, do you think the response at Lafayette Square to tear gas, pepper spray, and beat protesters and injure American citizens who were just simply exercising their First Amendment rights was appropriate?
Well, first, it's my understanding that no tear gas was used on Monday, June 1st.
Mr. Barr, that is a semantic distinction that has been proven false by many fact checkers.
How is it semantic?
Do you think?
How is it semantic? Tear gas is a particular compound.
You talked about chemical irritants, and it has been proven false by reports. So just answer the question. Do you think that it was appropriate at Lafayette Park to pepper spray, tear gas, and beat protesters and injure American citizens?
Well, I don't accept your characterization of what happened, but as I explained, the effort there was...
Mr. Barr, I just asked for a yes or no, so let me just tell you, I'm starting to lose my temper. According to sworn testimony before the House Natural Resources Committee by Army National Guard officer Adam DeMarco, who was there, this was, quote, an unprovoked escalation and excessive use of force against peaceful protesters.
Well, I don't remember DeMarco as being involved in any of the decision making.
Sir, the president told governors on a telephone call that the way to deal with the protesters of police brutality and systemic racism like in Lafayette Square is that, quote, you have to get much tougher. You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. These are terrorists. And he also talked about you on that call, sir. Here's what he said. He said, the Attorney General is here, Bill Barr, and we will activate Bill Barr and activate him strongly. Do you remember that call, Mr. Barr?
Yes, I do, but he wasn't talking about protesters. He was talking
Mr.
about
Barr,
rioters.
Apparently the president believes that you can be activated to implement the president's agenda and dominate American people exercising First Amendment rights if they're protesting against him. But let's look at how you respond when the protesters are supporters of the president. On two separate occasions, after President Trump tweeted, "Liberate Michigan," to subvert stay-home orders to protect the public health of people in Michigan, protesters swarmed the Michigan Capitol carrying guns, some with swastikas, Confederate flags, and one even with a dark-haired doll with a noose around its neck. Are you aware that these protesters called for the governor to be lynched, shot, and beheaded?
No.
You're not aware of that?
I was not aware of it.
Major protests in Michigan, you're the Attorney General, and you didn't know that the protesters, certain kinds of protesters, but in Michigan, when protesters carry guns and Confederate flags and swastikas and call for the governor of Michigan to be beheaded and shot and lynched, somehow you're not aware of that. Somehow you didn't know about it, so you didn't send federal agents in to do to the president's supporters what you did to the president's protesters. In fact, you didn't put pepper balls on those protesters. So the point I'm trying to make here, Mr. Barr, that I think is very important for the country to understand, is that there is a real discrepancy in how you react as the Attorney General, the top cop in this country, when white men with swastikas storm a government building with guns. There is no need for the president to, quote, activate you because they're getting the president's personal agenda done. But when black people and people of color protest police brutality, systemic racism, and the president's very own lack of response to those critical issues, then you forcibly remove them with armed federal officers, pepper bombs, because they are considered terrorists by the president.
Corporations are not people, too. Money is not speech. Man, in fact, it's the root of all. Right now, we have the right to be free. Corporations are not people, too. Money is not speech. Man, in fact, it's the root of all. Right now, up and defend your democracy.
Have you recently read the Constitution? There seems to be some type of confusion. I thought it said the people were the institution and not the corporations that simply want to use them. The truth is currently a fusion of corporate loot and our government that is outright abusive. People need change. The state, it refuses. They're saying we're mistaken. Well, show us where the proof is. They control the media, movies, and the music, and determine where supplies of the water and food live. We need a strategy. Here is a solution.